notice!
I don't own a 3DS capture device, so any footage of mine is likely to be of a substandard quality. You have been informed. Now enjoy, my pretties. What would you say to me if I were to say to you that I have never touched a JRPG game in my life? Would you come after me with torches and pitchforks calling for my head on a silver platter? Or would you be in the same boat as me? Well, whatever you want to say about this fact, it still remains that Japanese role-playing games were never part of my gaming repertoire growing up as a kid. Nonetheless, I have now decided that this trend needs to be eradicated like the plague, since I have now had chance to play through the opening moments of Square Enix's latest JRPG IP, Bravely Default. On the face of it all, Bravely Default sounds like the least appropriate title for a JRPG to ever have been invented. I mean, it only makes sense if you add on the numerous subtitles it has attached to the actual name, such as Flying Fairy or Where the Fairy Flies. But even then, it's still a piss poor name on first impression, but we'll soon find out that the name has some relevance to the actual game in some way. Hold your horses now. Bravely Default, as I understand, came out as a spiritual successor to the Final Fantasy spin-off title, The Four Heroes of Light. Very much like a traditional JRPG mechanics-wise, as to be expected given its namesake, but it had a slightly modified battle system, swapping out traditional magic points for a different command. But how is this relevant to Bravely Default? Well, from the European box art image I was able to find, both artwork styles seem remarkably similar, and Bravely Default also uses a modified battle system like Four Heroes of Light does, only the elements changed between the two are different, as we will soon find out. Keep holding those horses! The story goes along the lines of four young heroes being united together through a series of mystical happenings and chance encounters, and eventually setting out to restore balance to a destabilized world or some epic shit like that. I haven't really gotten too far in the story to know how it goes as yet. As for the actual gameplay, much of it is very similar to older school Final Fantasy games. You are in control of these four characters, Tiz, Onyez, Ringabel, and Edea, as they travel a landscape defeating monsters and evildoers in random encounters. The crucial game-changing aspect comes in these battle scenarios with the introduction of the flagship Brave and Default system, giving this game its slightly weird title. Haha, told you we'd find out eventually! You can choose to perform attacks, use magic or items in a standard fashion, or you can choose to brave up to 3 times to perform a maximum of 4 commands per character. Braving this many times for each character leads to a potential 16 commands in one single turn, which sounds simply fantastic! But doing so comes at a cost to your character's brave points. They can only perform commands if their brave points value is not less than 0. So if a character unleashes 4 commands in a turn, they'll need to wait the next 3 subsequent turns to refill their brave points until they can make a move again. Alternatively, the player can make some of their characters default, which works in the same way as a guard or a defend command would do in other JRPGs. At the cost of not making a command in that turn, that character will defend themselves so they won't lose as many hit points from enemy attacks. And then in the next turn, they save a brave point, allowing them to perform more commands in that turn without risking running their BPs dry. So if you defaulted for 1 turn, you can perform 2 commands in the next turn and still be able to make a move in the turn after that. I hope you understood all that, because we are not going over that again. Unless you wanted to play back that part, in which case I actually have no say in the matter, woe is me. This unique battle system was in fact one of the biggest things that appealed to me most about this game, despite not having much experience in other JRPG battle mechanics. And from what I've played, it's been really easy to figure out the game's Brave and Default system, thanks in part to the system being rather intuitively designed and lots of helpful tips being given to you as you play. It's also a really great system because it encourages you to consider the defensive options you have. Guarding to some people seemed pointless in other JRPGs, but in Bravely Default, going defensive gives you the chance to do more to help yourself out in later turns without penalty. The job system that's prominent in other games comes into this one too, giving you the opportunity to try leveling all the potential damage, reconnaissance, and magic-based jobs there are. You earn these jobs through items called asterisks, given out from defeating major boss characters, and each one provides different affinities with certain weapons and armors. Through the battle system and from certain treasure chests in the game's dungeon areas, you can earn money to spend on items, equipment, and spell scrolls. I do have to admit, however, that the game's economy did put me off slightly, with some items being fairly steeply priced given the amount of money you earn from random encounter battles. It might improve as the game goes on with more money being dished out from battles, but that's still for me to see. Now, many people consider a JRPG's gameplay system to be the most important feature of the whole thing, but I say that presentation and atmosphere are key as well. And by God, Bravely Default's presentation is gobsmackingly beautiful. Environments and world assets are all pretty much hand-painted and gorgeous looking, and the chibi-inspired in-game models generally look okay to me as well. Some of them look a little bit off, however. As there's this one guy that you fight at the beginning of the game. He is a monk, apparently, but he's got this top-heavy, muscle-bound figure that in this game's overall style looks slightly off-putting. But there is no denying this game's extremely pretty environment, and I would also like to extend a hand to the people behind the game's soundtrack. It's a clean and very nice music score, and some tracks mixed together overdriven guitars with typical symphonic instruments. It's one of my favourite musical combinations ever, and it's provided some incredibly energetic and kick-ass backing tracks for the battle scenarios. One of these in particular is a new contender for being one of my favourite pieces of game music ever. Oh my god, so good! What? Another major selling point for me was this game's substantial amount of wireless connectivity features. Street Pass is utilised very extensively here, as by passing people who own their own copies of the game, you add villages to your Nerende restoration side element, letting you rebuild shops in quicker time to get access to better items, and you can also call on them to help you out in a battle. Summoning a player met in Street Pass unleashes the move that they have set to send to other players, and you can also set your own powerful command to send out to someone who maybe isn't as far in the game as you. It's all been thought out really well, and it's a really nice touch. I can generally say that my experience so far with Bravely Default as my first ever taste of JRPG gameplay is going really well thus far. It is such a damn shame that stuff like this isn't getting the grandiose attention from us Western audiences like games such as Final Fantasy VII did before. It could just be that JRPG stalwarts are finding the genre is becoming worn out or is changing direction too much. Take the direction that Final Fantasy is going in right now with the whoring out of FF13 spin-offs. But as for me, Bravely Default is really quite hard for me to ignore. And now that I'm well underway in it, I'm more excited now than ever with the news that there will be a sequel to this game. And I might just end up picking that one up too when it gets made. I guess you could say, I'm now hooked! This has been one of my rapid rambles. Stay you, and stay awesome. Also, this guy kind of looks like he's singing or something. Hey, thanks again for watching, you lovely people. Be sure to give a like and a favourite if you enjoyed the video, and if you really liked it and you want more, consider subscribing to the RichaadoShow, so you can be among the first to see new content when it's ready. Thanks again, and I will see you guys later on.